confessed that Carlota had experienced difficult things since the master's death. For example, they had tried to remove her from the Kotapek ashram. As we said goodbye, he gave us a loving hug, and as he hugged my wife, something happened that's hard to explain. He said to her, "My Laura, I knew I was capturing the virgin, whom every woman carried within, not just the woman of flesh and blood." Shortly after, she and I agreed that Master Estrada was the one who embraced us through Brother Alcantara. With my intuition I understood that, like Master Estrada, he could not touch us directly, he did so through our Brother Alcantara. Finally, my wife had experienced the presence of Sublime Elder Brother in a unique way. Americo Living Trail, 363. During the journey to the bus station, the people of Zalapa were extremely friendly. Already settled in the truck on the way back to Mexico City, he pondered. Brother Alcantara had corrected my way of riding the sign of Aquarius. "You do it backwards." And she added, "Like two mountains." Brother Alcantara continued speaking. "But Master Estrada taught us that it should be written like this." He also told us that the sign of Scorpio carries the arrow inwards, as if pointing to Sagittarius. He wrote this just below, on the last page of the book we gave him. Then my wife wrote her address right above these two astrological symbols, after Brother Alcantara had requested it. I said to the brother, "They're both signs, Sagittarius and Scorpio, we're doing well." I was referring to the secret as a sublime ideal that rose again from the ashes. The white horse, mentioned in the Apocalypse, which emerges from the dead with its instincts transformed. This is how the Greek myth makes us feel, when it speaks of the winged horse, Pegasus. He didn't understand my words, but he clearly grasped the idea. He had grasped the truth and smiled. As I thought about the matter during the return trip to Mexico City, it was easy for me to understand that, until now, I had written the symbol of Aquarius as two mountains, as if waiting for the sun to rise between them and the east, where Veracruz was located. The breasts of the Eternal Mother awaiting the dawn. But my brother Americo Living Trail, 364, reinstated the universal symbol of Aquarius used by Maestro Estrada, which we true Aquarians should carry to the four corners of the earth, to teach the gospel of the New Age to all who were ready to be blessed with the water of the water-bearer, Aquarius, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is what the last chapter of the Gospel according to St. Matthew, Aquarius, mentions. This reminded me of when I belonged to the great universal fraternity, solar line, and was a yaman, meaning abstainer. Master Estrada had recently passed away, and the message that appeared in the Bible was precisely that, go into the world, and bring the new gospel, blessing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. My mind had soared. In the mountains, that represented the nourishment of humanity, emerging as if from a woman's breasts, in my worship of the feminine, it had become a universal symbol. Just like the opening of the door, to acknowledge the permission granted, to be able to travel through the four arms of the Aquarian cross in the Mexican Republic, that had thus begun. I told her, the door to the east has opened, and Brother Alcantara remains as guardian of Veracruz for our order. He may never know it, and that doesn't matter, but he already belongs to our Chamber of Secrets. Third Pilgrimage, Teotihuacan, July 22, 1999. Background: all the information I needed to do my work began to appear in due time. My wife already had one of these books, The Awakening of Teotihuacan by Antonio Velasco Pina, when we were married, and at that moment, when we were going to visit Teotihuacan, where men become gods, I wanted to find out what Regina had done in the sacred place on June 21, 1968. I found invaluable data, in which I came to participate in a particular and direct way, with a precise date in relation to the energy of August 11, 1999, which was already upon Americo Living Trail, 365. Humanity and needed to be captured, so that the last of the seals of Teotihuacan would be put into operation through the Aquarius Cross, thus contacting the entire Mexican Republic. This would happen, and then it would be activated for America in 2001 and since then, as the Antacarana Bridge, for the permanent connection of the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan with the Great Pyramid of Egypt. This is how I understood it, but of course keeping my openness, in order to check to what extent all this is true. In the book The Awakening of Teotihuacan by Antonio Velasco Pina, he gives us a historical account of the awakening of the sacred center. due to its importance and direct relationship with the visit I made there with my pilot group and my wife, and later with the third pilgrimage, held on July 22, 1999, it is instructive to present a summary of this text, at the heart of which are the teachings of Regina, when she visited this sacred center on June 21, 1968. And broke the first seal at the heart of La Piramida's sun. Teotihuacan is at the same time a temple, a university, a musical instrument and a machine for managing cosmic energies. Defining Teotihuacan is easy, the difficult part is ensuring that these functions are not mere possibilities, but rather become an everyday reality. As to who first built it, and when, it's unknown. The city was built by giants many thousands of years ago. After a long period of splendor, the city declined and was abandoned. Around 1000 BC, the second era of Teotihuacan began. At that time, just as in our times, the conditions were favorable for the reactivation of the Mexican chakra, and the subsequent creation of 4 new cultures. The first of these was the Olmec, and its members took on the task of cleaning and putting into operation many sacred centers that had been inactive for centuries. One of the most important was Teotihuacan, so they proceeded to its complete restoration, since it recovered its functions as a temple, university, orchestra, and machinery. The Olmecs placed special emphasis on its temple functions, turning it into a super-sacred sanctuary. The second was carried out by the Mayans. They paid particular attention to everything related to the university aspects of Teotihuacan. And they did it in a big way. The ceremonial center is also a kind of gigantic library, containing thousands of pieces of data on the proportions, dimensions, and relationships of each of its buildings. There's everything from extremely complicated mathematical models, scale reproductions of constellations, and precise information on the orbits of the planets. The city is full of the Americo Living Trail, 366 most unimaginable systems for performing calculations and more calculations, on everything that existed and yet to come, especially on the cycles of the stars. Only a few natural caverns have been explored, where the movements of many stars were measured through water wells. And so, the Mayans ensured that every stone in Teotihuacan contained a message of profound wisdom. The third was La Zapoteca. They focused on fully developing the potential of this sacred center as a musical instrument. With their love and sense of harmony, they managed to integrate the different buildings to such an extent that they continuously intoned a perfect symphony. The fourth and final phase is El Nahuatl. Best known as this is, when Teotihuacan reached its peak. The Navajo transformed Teotihuacan into a kind of incredible machine capable of capturing and harnessing the most powerful cosmic energies, benefiting not only humanity, but the planet itself. The 4 stages add up to more than 1,000 years. It spans from the 5th century BC to the 8th century AD. It became the imperial capital of what was the first Toltec Empire. All this is something that is intended to be recovered in the 20th century. At the beginning of a new era, there would be a very special concentration of energies in La Piramida's sun for a few moments. If these energies were properly channeled, they would allow Mexico to return to its legitimate ruler. What they tried to do, and fortunately they succeeded, was to get a pyramid ready to operate for a few minutes on March 21, 1948. It was a bit like taking a broken engine, knowing that it was about to be struck by lightning, and making the necessary adjustments, so that the discharge would get it running for a few moments. After 48, the Guardians expected the public return of Cuauhtémoc, Regina, on March 21, 1968. The emperor would bring the mission of awakening Mexico, and his first task would consist, precisely, in using the Pyramid of the Moon to break for a few months the prison of dreaming in which humanity is imprisoned. Regina was shown the entrance to the heart of the Pyramid of the Sun, which was the first seal. It consisted of a 4-petaled flower marked on the floor inside the pyramid, right in the center of the base. Regina makes the connection with the 4 elements, water, earth, air, and fire. Regina manages to break the first seal, and future envoys will break the others until the Pyramid of the Sun is completely reactivated. According to Regina, seals are placed in various places, not only physical ones, but also in another dimension, so that for a site or pyramid to function again, each of these seals must be broken. The purpose of the seals is to prevent energy from escaping or being. Americo Living Trail, 367 misused in times of decline. Sometimes the holders of the keys are assemblies of sages from very distant countries, as is the case in Tibet. Thus, for the flame in the heart of La Pyramide Sun to reach the summit and emerge, it is first necessary to break all the seals that exist in this pyramid. When asked if she can break all the seals of the pyramid, she answers, "I don't have the keys to do it, nor is it a job that corresponds to me. All I want for now is to know where those seals are, not from the entire city, but only those of the Pyramid of the Sunday." Here's a seal. Can you see or feel it? It was located near a closed door leading to the tunnel at the base of the pyramid. It was built by those who tried to investigate whether there was anything inside the pyramid, but were unable to find the heart. The energy that springs from within tends to come out, and will seek to circulate through the passageway. Mexico is asleep, but not dead. When the first seal of the sun is broken, La Pyramide, the energy is projected straight forward, towards the regular-sized plaza located right in front of you. La Pyramide, in the center of the plaza. This plaza functions as a container and returner of the energy emanating from the heart of the pyramid, Regina asserted. It's something like one of the heart valves, which regulate blood circulation. The energy is stored in the plaza, and from that point, the temple indicated, it is returned to the pyramid to begin its ascent. Upon reaching the first section of the pyramid, climbing the front steps, one can examine the two wide platforms attached to the monument. These were undoubtedly places intended for important ceremonies, which must have been observed with reverent attention by the huge crowds gathered at the foot of the pyramid. Point La Pyramide. Here's another seal, Regina concluded, tapping her foot on the floor of one of the platforms, the one located on one side of the pyramid. Imagine this whole place packed with people, some 40,000 people. Also, imagine that these people aren't just there, but are, to some extent, aware of what this place is, and have come to participate in a ritual. The rituals performed here are intended to harness that energy for the benefit of all those gathered below. Americo Living Trail, 368. In this place, there is also a kind of valve, which only opens when the appropriate ritual is performed. When this happens, energy flows and is channeled downward to the people who came to participate in the ceremony. There existed in this place a container of energy, and it was precisely the consciousness of the people who participated in the rituals. Each of them acted as a container of the energy, retaining it for their own benefit, to the extent that their internal development allowed them to do so. During the rituals, all of this became a kind of grand representation of the yang part of the Chinese symbol for yin and yang. A symbol that symbolizes creative duality, and teaches us that every force or manifestation has its opposite within itself. The rituals performed here were white and positive, constituting a great yang. People's consciousness received the energy, and used it for spiritual growth, but there were also, by law and polarity, those who rejected that energy, and thus integrated the equivalent of the small black circle within the large white part. In doing so, they became the returner, that allowed the energy to return to the pyramid, and continue its ascent toward the summit. And to break the seal on this place, Regina continued, they will have to act in the same way. The master or masters who know the keys to breaking the seal will perform a ritual on this platform. The energy will be released, and will circulate downwards. She pointed to the wide spaces in front of the monument. There must be a container there, made up of the consciousness of no fewer than 40,000 people eager to harness the energy. Finally, a small group must act as a returner, rejecting the energy, and returning it to the pyramid. The final seal is located right at the center of the pyramid's apex. It is here that cosmic and telluric energies merge. When the seal is broken, an invisible flame will be produced, radiating its light in all four directions. Those who wish to connect with that light need not come to Teotihuacan, they can do so from wherever they are, even on the other side of the earth. They only need to mentally visualize that light and tune in to some degree to the energy that will continually flow from the pyramid. The Dalai Lama never forgot his commitment to being the custodian of certain secrets about Mexico. Thus, as soon as he became certain that the awakening of the Mexican chakra had begun, launching a process that had a high probability of becoming irreversible, he understood that the time had come to collaborate in accelerating this process. This occurred during his historic trip to Mexico in 1989. At 9:47 a.m. on July 3, 1989, the 14th Dalai Lama arrived by helicopter at the ancient imperial metropolis of the Toltecs, Teotihuacan. He was accompanied by a small group of people. 3 mysterious old women dressed in white were waiting for him at the foot of La Pirámide Sun Americo Living Trail, 369. Without any apparent ceremony, the Dalai Lama naturally muttered a few words, and made a few quick hand movements, that went completely unnoticed by most of his companions. The energy radiating from the heart of the pyramid was thus able to take the first step on its long journey to the summit. The Lamas of Gadenshard's monastery, on March 21, 1990, would have the mission of untying the next seal. When the first seal, that imprisoned the energy inside the pyramid, was broken, that energy began to flow outward. Since the container and returner located in the plaza in front of the monument were not yet functioning, the energy dissipated, being wasted similar to water escaping from a faucet left open. Such waste was not to continue for long. Thus, in compliance with strict orders issued by the Dalai Lama himself, 8 lamas from the Gadenshard's monastery arrived in Mexico City in March 1990. On the morning of March 21, 1990, the Tibetan lamas arrived at Teotihuacan. A huge crowd of approximately 30,000 people, almost all dressed in white, waited curiously and expectantly for the ritual to be performed by the Tibetans. After ascending to the stone temple located in the center of the plaza at the foot of the Pyramid of the Sun, the lamas began the ceremony. They used a variety of ritual instruments, long copper trumpets, small drums, bells, and cymbals. Accompanied by strange guttural sounds, the lamas immediately transformed the atmosphere, creating a sacred time and space. Adding sacred dances and chants, words of power, mantras, and realizing that a close connection had been established between the ritual practitioners and the energy emanating from the pyramid, Rinpoche Topjile uttered, with a powerful accent, the secret invocation intended to break the invisible seal that existed in that place. Its breaking was perceived as a sensation of enormous joy by those present. The breaking of the seal located in the plaza in front of the pyramid allowed the energy emanating from it to begin its ascent through the interior of the monument. Then the lamas from Drepung Losling Monastery came to continue their mission on March 21, 1992. The authorities flatly refused to allow the ritual to be performed, but concerned figures, also important within the highest echelons of government, did everything possible to allow the lamas to carry out their task. March 19, 1992, arrived, and the authorities still refused to allow the foreign monks to visit Teotihuacan. But on the night of March 20, in his capacity as Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, the President had to order the troops to return to their barracks and clear the way for visitors to the sacred center. Americo Living Trail, 370. Along with the rays of the sun, the lamas appeared. There were 10 of them, 7 of them very young and 3 of them elderly. The large crowd gathered at Teotihuacan had formed a long fence to facilitate the Tibetans' access. As they passed, people threw flowers and waved their hands. Still smiling and waving, the lamas reached the foot of the pyramid and ascended its steps until they reached the wide platform where the seal was located, preventing them from harnessing the energy generated inside the monument. A large reception group awaited them on the platform, performing the traditional pre-Hispanic greeting to the 4 winds with the beat of conch shells and drums. Once this was concluded, the lamas began the ceremony. Mudras and chants, the resonant sounds of unique instruments and incredible guttural chords. At a certain moment, a certain kind of breaking of the seal was perceived, because the energy that flowed from the pyramid was immediately captured by the immense container, which constituted the consciousness of the more than 40,000 people gathered beneath the monument. These people, even visually due to the wideness of their robes, integrated the great yang to which Regina had referred. But where was the equally predicted yin part, that is, the small dark portion that was supposed to function as a returner of the energy? At that moment, a black dot advanced through the sea of whiteness. They were people dressed in black, and carrying long poles. After making their way through the white crowd, the group in black began their ascent to the pyramid. There were 13 of them, 12 men and a woman who marched at the front, shouting loudly, repeating the same statement. "Get out of here, you damn foreigners." This is ours. The group in black completed their ascent of the first section of the pyramid, and arrived a short distance from one of the corners of the platform where the ceremony was taking place. Accessing this space required simply a single leap across the small space that separates the platform from the rest of the monument. The beings in black were preparing to make the leap when they noticed that the aforementioned corner was protected by a fence made up of 10 men and women. They were members of the Rainbow Warriors, members of the international environmental community based in Huhucoyotl. For a few seconds, the newcomers threateningly brandished their wooden poles, hesitating whether to jump. Realizing that the attitude of the members of the fence indicated they were unwilling to give up even an inch of the space they occupied, the beings in black opted to continue advancing along the corridor surrounding the pyramid, thus entering the platform through the corner, which allows much easier access. The time it took them to complete this journey gave the numerous spectators on the upper steps of the pyramid a chance to realize that the group had come with the intention of attacking the llamas. Multiple reactions immediately followed, all of them clearly supportive of the Tibetans. A growing chorus of over 1,000 voices began to repeat in a heavy accent. Tibet, Mexico. Tibet, Mexico. Americo Living Trail, 371, 371. Some people jumped from the steps into the corridor, clearly intending to block the advance of the beings in black, but they formed a tight team, and knew how to use their long staffs against anyone who dared to stand in their way. It would certainly have been easy to stop them, returning violence for violence. No such mistake was made. The united consciousness of all those watching what was happening came to the correct conclusion that, if force were used to repel the attack, the ritual the llamas were performing would be nullified. After beating aside the last people in white who were blocking their way, the beings in black entered the platform where the ceremony was taking place. They were confronted by a leading authority, Mr. Miguel Limon, Undersecretary of the Interior, in charge of immigration affairs. In the forceful tone, he reproached them for their attitude, contrary to the traditional hospitality of the Mexican people. His words disarmed and paralyzed 6 of the attackers, but the other 7 continued their advance. A second authority confronted them, Master Domingo Diaz Porta, Titlapochtli, whose mission to contribute to the rebirth of the sacred traditions of America has the support of the guardians of those traditions throughout the continent. In a calm and serene voice, the master stated that Teotihuacan cannot be the monopoly of anyone, but rather constitutes the heritage of all humanity. 6 black figures instantly abandoned their aggressive intentions, their faces no longer expressed any hostility. Only the woman leading the group persisted in attempting to attack the llamas. She was stopped by one of those artistically shaped clay vessels known as incense burners. The sudden appearance of the beings in black had produced 2 entirely different reactions among the Tibetans. The faces of the 7 young llamas revealed surprise and bewilderment. In contrast, the features of the 3 older llamas expressed not only pleasure but profound joy. Without ceasing to play their instruments and chant, the gazes of the 3 llamas were fixed on a single point, the smoking censer held in the hands of one of the attendees at the ceremony, named Cecilia Albaran. The llama's gazes revealed an energy of identical nature to that emanating from the pyramid. It was this energy that moved the censer, causing him to trace in the air the limits of an invisible but impenetrable barrier. The woman in black stopped, and it was then that the llamas concluded their ceremony. The seal was broken. The container, formed by the consciousness of countless people, had worked perfectly, and likewise, the returner, made up of the small group in black, had operated with unsurpassed efficiency, returning the energy to the monument, so that it could continue its ascent through the interior of the ancient construction. Now all that was missing was the breaking of the last seal, which would produce the fusion of telluric and cosmic forces, and allow the energy of the pyramid to be used, anywhere in the world, by all beings capable of tuning their own vibrations to those emanating from Teotihuacan. In March 1993, the eternal guardians of Mexico, guardians of other times, were the ones who lit the flame, and began the aforementioned reactivation process. They would also be the ones who would conclude it, by breaking the last of the seals, placed at the top of the monument. Americo Living Trail, 372, 372. According to what was perceived by the secret guardian of Teotihuacan, as well as the opinions of the most important human guardians of the sacred traditions of Mexico, this rupture occurred in the month of March. From 1993. Athenon, the most powerful and subtle energies of the cosmos and the earth united in the pyramid of the sun, to generate a light with which all beings of goodwill, anywhere in the world, who wish to take advantage of it to achieve lofty purposes, can connect. La Pyramidal Sol is now reactivated and functioning. Current times are propitious for the return of the Olmecs, that is, for the creation of a culture of synthesis based on silence. End of summary. Comment. On March 21, 1992, I was unaware of the significance of the event that had taken place at the Pyramid of the Sun. I was present there. I happened to arrive, and witnessed a small group dressed in black shouting at the Tibetan Lamas performing their ritual on the platform. At that moment, I had encountered the family that belonged to the Kundalini Yoga fraternity. And when I asked my old friend what was going on, he explained to me that those brothers in black were coming to attack the Tibetans. I witnessed how tempers calmed down and everyone started shouting Tibet, Mexico. The reason for that visit to Teotihuacan was really to introduce my 7-year-old eldest son to Maestro Diaz Porta, so he could cut his hair. And so it happened. After that, I returned to my retreat partner. I had nothing to do with the mother of my children. Years later, with my wife and the pilot group, I climbed the Pyramid of the Sun, and was received with great honors by the guardians of other times. Then, I made the third pilgrimage on July 22, 1999, when I was truly given a very special recognition. Perhaps sharing it will help us understand how the guardians of other times help ignite the flame at the top of the Pyramid of the Sun. Around July 22, I had recently visited the part of the Aquarius cross, corresponding to Scorpio, the eagle, and the caller. And this fact did not go unnoticed when the reactivation of Teotihuacan, as a super machine that connects humanity with the cosmos through the pyramids, was reaching its culmination, especially with the resurgence of the Olmec culture. I suspected that for the pyramids of the sun and the moon to enter into full activity, it required not only the presence of an enlightened one, but, above all, a living path. That is, someone honest, humble and with a courageous heart, dedicated to the Pyramid of the Sun, who would also carry out this act on a precise date, where the cosmic force would be so overwhelming, that nothing and no one could obstruct his path. As the Son of God, faithful representative of the Christ Virgin, the Christ of the masses, that every human being is. Americo Living Trail, 373. If the guardians of other times could light the flame on their own, it makes no sense for them to place or remove seals from sacred monuments, relying on humanity's desire for a better world, so that it could function as a container for energy. Undeniably, it was only possible to light that invisible flame at the top of the Pyramid of the Sun, if an incarnated Quetzalcoatl ascended to the top at the opportune moment, making contact as an impersonal representative of both the guardians of other times and humanity itself. I had read about what some people thought about the nature of the pyramids, and I was also developing some ideas about it. But it was the day before this visit to Teotihuacan that an irresistible desire to write about the nature of the pyramids arose within me. What I basically clarified in my mind was pyramids and sacred monuments, like everything else, including the physical and human body, are designed to be doors for the entry and exit of cosmic energies. Cosmic energy enters the pyramids, according to their design, but above all according to the law of survival. This is how humanity's energy flows out into the cosmos through the law of sacrifice. Not a literal sacrifice of pain, flesh, and organs from our physical body, but rather a surrender of our lower self to our higher self. The goal of God and all of His creation is to eat, in order to live. Life as such is eternal being, yet subject to the cycles of nature, which in an elemental way refer to birth, growth, maturity, rebirth. This is how, according to the law of survival, the strong feed on the weak and the spiritual on the material. On the surface, this law seems terribly cruel, but essentially everything is harmony, beauty, and perfection. Simply because in the realm of being, death does not exist, only life, which, because of this, always survives. Forms and their mortal appearance are merely a laboratory for eternal life, so that the immortal can incarnate and know itself. This is why forests emerge, populated by countless beings with forms, acting according to the law of the strong over the weak. It is for all this, that the pyramids can not only transform a simple mortal into an immortal, but precisely the reason for the pyramid's existence is to transform a simple mortal into an immortal. That human being then becomes the engine and heart of the pyramids themselves. He merges with the pyramid, until he becomes one with it, and can then use it, as every human being who uses an airplane or a car today does to transport themselves from one place to another in the world at high speed. A human being capable of using the pyramid as a cosmic vehicle has become the emperor of his people. Or, he can become a being as conscious and elevated as the owner of an airplane. Passengers make enormous sacrifices to buy their plane ticket in order to be transported from one place to another, but they are not the real owners of the plane. Nor is the pilot. The owner of the plane is more than the emperor. He is in reality the high initiate, the savior of the world. The pyramids are time-space gateways. In fact, every living form is. Everything is immanent, everything stores and emanates energy. The pyramids are energy sensors, and those who approach them perceive humanity's state of consciousness, but only according to their own individual level of awakening. Because according to wisdom, no one can perceive what they are not ready to perceive. Americo Living Trail, 374. In short, for some, the pyramids regulate their slavery, but for others, it is their throne, their footstool. See Gospels. The Pyramid of the Moon is basically a regulator of humanity's slavery, while the Pyramid of the Sun is a regulator of its true freedom. The pyramids are devices that the gods use, but by which the ignorant are used. The pyramids recognize who they belong to, and no one can permanently deceive them. The pyramids are a reproduction of the macro for the benefit of the micro. The pyramids are a double spiral, like two pyramids in the shape of a star tetrahedral, one with its base on earth and the other in heaven. From below, we only see the material spiral or pyramid, but not the ethereal one, which is the true one. This is because the double spiral is the archetype of creation. For example, in Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Moon is approached, and if the date is right and the chosen human, the one who offered himself as a sacrifice, or nourishment to the moon, turns out not to die, but to control it to the point that, instead of sealing his pack as a slave, he is freed. And from then on, the living stone cannot touch him, but rather serves him so that he, or she, himself decides who lives and who dies. The pyramids are living stones that were arranged as devices, that is, they are high-tech machines, cosmic computers, to be used by the gods and their children. Because a device is useless without a motor, or rather, without someone awake on their own, these devices are of no use, unless they are deliberately programmed to react in a certain way under certain influences. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and like in the book The Little Prince, if we want a wave to break on the shore, we wait for the right conditions. Then, we command the wave to break, and it obeys. This must be the case with the pyramids. They are cosmic computers that operate when the cosmic current is favorable. Otherwise they become vulgar devices, and everything that can be produced is for the personal ego, and not for the essential individual as a being. Once the pyramids are approached, and the chosen one achieves, due to his own state of consciousness, that instead of being food, he becomes the one fed within the laboratory of life. Then, even though he is no longer physically in the pyramid, the moment in which he made it his own, and boarded it becomes, as Saint Germain would say, a momentum, a moment prolonged into eternity. And no matter where he is physically, it is as if he remains in the pyramid forever. Sometimes, due to the need to capture large loads for transport to the terrestrial world and humanity, it is necessary for the owner to periodically visit the pyramid. Like a businessman who periodically visits his company, in order to understand the current situation and remedy it, thus maintaining balance, and not losing control. Also, when, as a simple student of wisdom, we persistently visit sacred monuments on auspicious dates, they begin to reveal their purpose to us. Perhaps like the case of the temporary worker, who is forced to fight for a new contract every time his previous one runs out, in order to survive. Americo Living Trail, 375. Not all who have controlled the pyramids are truly white magicians or chosen ones. Some have sought to force things, and control the subtle technology from a merely external perspective. They have then fallen into distorted magic, and, with it, into completely negative and destructive external sacrifices. When this happens, the effects of their power become increasingly short-lived, and thus the pyramids become devouring and destructive devices, nothing more than a black hole. But this can't last forever, especially if they are pyramids designed exclusively for white magic. because pyramids are like the genie in Aladdin's lamp, obeying only the one who controls them. In reality, they are designed to serve the higher self, the true master who built them. So when the propitious cosmic current arrives, and the precise date arrives, the chosen one appears and becomes king. If, for example, in Teotihuacan, someone approaches the pyramid of the moon and succumbs, becoming imprisoned in his dreams, then the nightmare of deluding himself into having awakened occurs. And if, with these feelings, he still attempts to approach the pyramid of the sun, to take the imperial crown, what happens is that from lunatic he becomes salatic, that is, equally lunatic, but now with the ego of a king or leader, that is far from his true self. Precisely when he dreams most of having already achieved it. For this reason, it's not even enough to be enlightened to control the pyramid of the sun, one must be the chosen one to be able to embody the emperor of the kingdom. Not only for the country in which the pyramid is located, but also for the people of humanity. Because the pyramid of the sun and the king are one. The masters told me it is not only about having achieved enlightenment, but the fundamental thing is how you became enlightened, that is, being a living path. Perhaps even someone without being enlightened could be like an enlightened person, and succeed in taking this control, since Christ the Virgin is in each and every human being. The fundamental requirement for surviving the sacrifice of the pyramid of the sun is this light or illumination. This is how one goes from being nourished to being the sustainer. The fervent disciple sacrifices himself to the cosmic energy and finds his spiritual master, to surrender himself to him without reservation, according to the law of love. The emperor, upon completely mastering the pyramid of the sun, recognizes his celestial father and the gods who use him as their particular nourishment, and who use him so that, through him, they may approach humanity and save it. And so, each moment and pyramid fulfills a perfectly specific function according to the four aspects of the Aquarius cross. It is an instrument that stores sacred information, Aquarius. It is a generator of healing and or productive vibrations, Taurus. It is the functionality of a high-tech machine, or, rather, a time machine always subject to the eternal present, Leo. Americo Living Trail, 376. And, above all, it is a transmuter of vile sexual magnetism, to sublimate it into divine, within the human being, whose keys remain in the deepest silence, and require the highest devotion, Scorpio. The locations occupied by monuments are fundamental, as is the astronomical moment in which they are built, and the intention behind their construction. In reality, the pyramids were designed and supervised in their construction by the creator gods, in order to control humanity, and to be able to feed off of it, while allowing this humanity the possibility of feeding off of the lower realms than the human one. Through each pyramid or sacred monument, we come into contact with a specific god. That god is the energy of a planet, a constellation, a cosmic ray, a hierarchy of angels, archangels, seraphim, etc. As form, humanity was created to serve as food for the gods, but as being or spirit, humanity was created, so that absolutely everyone could become gods, with the same experiences, benefits, and responsibilities as a god. Therefore, we should not understand that food refers only to a physical fact, but that it can be emotional, mental, spiritual, etc. Virtues, for example, are spiritual food. Humanity without contact with the cosmos is destined to perish. And for this contact with the cosmos to become ever more perfect, systematic, or rather, periodic, sacrifices are indispensable in the daily lives of people. These are not literal sacrifices, but rather sacrifices of the lower self to the higher self, and for this, the pyramids and sacred monuments are the appropriate instruments, only as means, and not as ends. In Teotihuacan, the pyramid of the moon is the door to evil. The door to the underworld, hell, which binds humanity to the cycle of reincarnation. In reality, it is something the gods had to plan this way, foreseeing that humanity would not want to evolve but rather devolve, and thus remain in perpetual corruption. So the pyramid of the moon is a protection, not a curse. Objectively, the pyramid of the moon is not nothing, or rather, in nothingness, but for humanity, it is very important, very real. For without it, nothing would remain of mortal humanity. That is why the pyramid of the moon, and all the monuments related to the moon, were created. Not to kill the moon, but to control it. Experiments have been conducted in many ways, to make the pyramids work, and thus help humanity for periods, sometimes short and sometimes long. And these experiments will continue, for they are as infinite as the human races. Within this rhythm of life's manifestation, gods incarnate in each golden age, capable of addressing and controlling the pyramids. They are then permanently activated, that is, while these ages of light last, or forever, if the entire planet definitively enters octaves of light. The ascended are gods who continually move from the human octave to the divine octave and vice versa. This occurs perfectly through the pyramids or other sacred instruments. They are the gods of humanity who, naturally, in turn, serve their even more supreme gods. Humanity approaches these elder brothers through those who, through special or strategic sacrifices, approach the pyramids and gain control of them. From this so-called sacrifice, they rise from the ashes like a phoenix or the twice-born. Let us recall Jesus Christ, when referring to eternal love and not pain, he exclaimed to his disciples. Americo Living Trail, 377, 377. I ask for mercy, not sacrifice. Towards Teotihuacan, July 22, 1999. Chronicle. It's early morning, and I've just finished my hatha yoga postures, as well as my first morning meditation with the Liberation Mudra. The brothers and sisters gradually arrived and joined in this meditation. When I opened my eyes, I found familiar faces in our room that I hadn't seen for almost a month. But especially that of the sister-in-law Mexicanidad, whom I found neither beautiful nor unpleasant in appearance, but who was especially different from the rest. She hides, or appears to hide, her emotions, and perhaps she feels the same way about my feelings, but the bond of brotherhood is conducive to uniting roots, the extreme between the indigenous past with which she identifies, and the utopian future with which I share. It is evident here that brotherhood unites everything in tolerance and conscious love. In any case, it was the sister, named Rihanna, who asked me for permission to attend, and I granted it, especially because despite not having the cross of the order, she was nevertheless one of the 13 attendees on the day of its founding. Our transfer from where we are to Teotihuacan, where men become gods, was meteoric in time, just over half an hour, no doubt because we are anonymous guardians of that place, due to its proximity. We were at the entrance to the temple of Quetzalcoatl, the citadel, and dawn hadn't yet broken. Since it wasn't time to enter, I decided to perform the ritual of circling the sacred site, following the cobblestone path that circles all the archaeological ruins of Teotihuacan, which I estimate is about 4 kilometers long. However, we didn't do this tour on foot but by car, because I believe it's not a sacrifice. Rather, the important thing is to keep our mind and heart open to the place. That's how we began to identify with the sacred site, at least as far as I'm concerned. And I clearly feel how the protective energy circle we marked close is right where we began, that is, at the entrance to the temple of Quetzalcoatl. We're barely 8 people, and their faces, in the light of dawn on July 22, 1999, are clearly restless and expectant of something that must happen. They're like children with a child they're waiting for to lead the game he's invited them to. Their pupils reveal wonder and doubt, which are worth trying to dispel. He took them to the mound at the main entrance, where the highway coming from Mexico City ends. Americo Living Trail, 378, 378. Once here, I use the sword I call Flaming to mark their protective circle, and adjust their chakras. Humbly, they kneel one by one. To my surprise, their chakras are almost adjusted, which tells me that their desire has been stronger than any obstacles they may have encountered in the previous week, since only with a truly open attitude toward the act about to be performed, can their energy be balanced. I'll begin by telling you what we're here to accomplish, according to my understanding of the matter. I also told you what I'd been meditating and writing about the day before regarding my thoughts on the pyramids and their reason for existence. I added some convictions by saying the goal is to become food for the gods, and this may frighten us, but in reality, everything is food for everything, by the law of survival. Curiously, we are not frightened by the fact that we are daily food for those exploiters who do not hesitate to pressure the majority, with the arrogance of feeling like they're slaves. And this happens, because we are rarely aware that we are devoured in multiple ways in our lives. The moon does this, feed on the human machine. Therefore, if the initiate ascends the pyramid of the moon, and is not eaten, then it means he is a victor, and has managed to control the lunar force. Subsequently, upon ascending the pyramid of the sun, he becomes king. This is why, in the Golden Ages, sacrifice has never consisted of literally tearing out one's heart, but actually giving it to the gods. We are at the cosmic moment prophesied for centuries. And in the sky, the sign of the Son of Man is formed, that is, the Aquarian cross. Then, on earth, someone goes to the sacred places of the forearms of the Aquarian cross. Veracruz is Scorpion, Olmec, Oaxaca is Taurus, Zapotec and Mixtec. Teotihuacan is from Leo, Nahuatl and Merida of Aquarius, Mayans. We go to Oaxaca by land, and Merida by plane, air. Why didn't someone think of doing this? In any case, after this is accomplished the route is open. When we are allowed into Teotihuacan, Sister Rihanna manages to smear her incense without being seen by the official guards. I signal her to light it in the Citadel's central temple, which she does, and then proceeds to protect each of us. When my turn comes, I kneel to receive this protection with sacred smoke, air, Aquarius, and I feel better, more confident, and stronger. Americo Living Trail, 379. We ready, and she says she's now going to follow the master, a servant. I tell her she should go ahead with the two women, who aren't accompanied by their partners, because we are going toward the Pyramid of the Moon. Then, when we head toward the Pyramid of the Sun, I'll be the one to go first. We begin the tour along the Avenue of the Dead, which I call Resurrection Road, which according to my calculations is associated with the week that I wanted to call the Resurrection of the Sublime Older Brother, that begins on July 22nd and ends on July 28th, because Master Estrada, earthly avatar, disincarnates on July 22nd, and was born on July 28th. On the Great Stone, where sadness and anguish should be left, Rihanna suggests that we touch it to leave all this behind. I do so with pleasure. In the ritual to ascend the Pyramid of the Moon, I intended to circle around it at ground level, but the path is blocked, supposedly due to repairs being done, and so I can only perform a protection by turning on the first level, already above the pyramid. I performed this turn alone, because I considered it the most prudent thing to do, as a strange force seemed to be imposing itself under the phantom of official authority. During this tour of the first level of the pyramid, when I reach the back, I encounter bricklayers working out of sight of the people who usually come from the Avenue of the Dead. They seem to be laying the paving, and El Maestro Master of the bricklayers shouts to me from below, where he is, directing the work. "Hey, what are you doing there? Go back the way you came." He was really upset, and I hadn't done anything to him, but for no reason. My presence made him angry in an inexplicable way. All this surprised me, so I sit on the stone La Pyramid while I contemplate my flaming sword covered with a brown cloak, which I used as a turban in my retreat. The reason I covered the sword like this was to not attract people's attention, and I wait to decide what to do, because I know that there is something that the divinity wants to point out to me in this symbol, but I do not fully understand it. Then I think it's best not to challenge these forces, since a direct fight with this type of energy doesn't interest me. I get up from where I was sitting, and intend to go back, but something positively fortuitous happens. A young bricklayer, who is on the same level as me physically, is already concerned about the matter, and has witnessed the aggressive shouting of the master bricklayer. As I'm grabbing my sword, to go back the way I came, he says to me angrily and with conviction, "Don't pay attention to him, he's crazy, you come in." His words of encouragement had a special effect on me, because they came from a new authority, not from official command, but from the people themselves. Americo Living Trail, 380. It seemed to me that, while respecting the people on their lunar paths, I was also being accepted. I stopped fearing an unwanted provocation, and my attitude became more determined. Then, I jumped over the small mound of earth, where the bricklayers were working, and continued on my way. I passed by where other bricklayers were working and greeted them. They smiled. Then, I turned the next corner until I closed the circle on this first level, always thinking that this protective circle marked with the sacred sword serves to safeguard a large portion of humanity plunged in ignorance, and trapped in the Pyramid of the Moon. The small group is waiting for me, having rushed to the top, and as soon as they saw that I didn't do the same, they turned back to get me. Is this how people generally walk through life, advancing in their careers, their professions, and their material successes, Yet something is missing, and they must turn back in search of those who can guide them toward the true path. Once again, humility seems like a mystery, but it is this virtue that breaks down social barriers to overcome the lunatic. Those of us who have more or less awakened, put whatever little or much we have achieved as individuals in material or spiritual goods at the service of truth. There is no other way. We advance to the next level, above the pyramid of the moon, and my companions are now both ahead and behind me. At this level, everyone takes turns going around the pyramid, so as not to attract too much attention from people. I'm concerned by the presence of the official security guard, who is not merely nervous, but rather strangely threatening. The guard decides to approach to fulfill his duty, but he seems to fear something psychosocial, that inspires him with fear of being socially and professionally expelled, so he takes extreme caution in fulfilling that duty. At the same time, in keeping with good manners, he tries to appear friendly, and argues that we should not have the incense lit. This forces us to play a game of lies, to which we humans have become so accustomed. So, we play innocent, explaining that we knew nothing about this official ban. He believes us, and leaves somewhat confused. Having found no fears in us regarding this, he seems annoyed at not having complied with official orders. Sister Rihanna tells us in a quiet voice, there is someone, invisible, taking care of the incense. Americo Living Trail, 381. 381. When the security guard is about 30 meters away from us, I jokingly say, "Officer, what's your name? So you know you've already given us permission to keep the incense lit." He smiles and says he doesn't give us permission to do such a thing. However, he leaves us alone. We reach the top of the rough, sharp stones, secured with cement. It's clear this is on purpose, perhaps to prevent anyone from staying here too long. There is a confusion in our ideas about what we should do, and we more or less understand each other. Some go to extremes, to invoke the four elements, the archangels and the four sustainers of the universe according to la tradición Mesoamericana. A brother comes, and points out that in the pamphlet I gave them to invoke the beings of light toward the four cardinal points, I had put the cardinal points backwards. I admit my mistake, and tell him to do it correctly when invoking. My wife and the incense burner remain in the center, at least I had been able to suggest this. I hear my partner calling on Christ to return to Earth. Queen, gather us all in the center, forming a circle, to mention the four sustainers of the universe. I take this opportunity to invite each of us to repeat a decree of liberation in the name of the I Am, to seal the door where evil resides. I'm the one who opens and ends, closing the circle in this personal decree by each of the members of our group. We begin the descent, and as we go down, Rihanna suggests we go to places where we can collect wood to fuel the incense. I tell her it's best not to stray from the path. Now I go ahead of the group. During the descent from the Pyramid of the Moon, I see a solitary young foreigner. At first, it seems to me that this brother had joined during the repetition of the decree, and ended up participating in the closing of the circle. I think he resembles Christ. Then I say to the brother who returned from Canada and knows English, "Since you speak English, give our brochure 33 to that brother who seems to have a face like Jesus Christ at 33 years old. He turns out to be Brazilian, but he knows English and Spanish." Arriving before the Pyramid of the Sun, I stop right in the middle of the plaza in front of me. It's the small temple in front of the Pyramid of the Sun. I position myself. Americo Living Trail, 382, 382. In the center of this place, to directly investigate what was supposed to be the second seal, which was now supposed to be broken, allowing the energy coming from the heart of the Pyramid of the Sun to flow freely. I stand in the center of the plaza, and discover the place where this energy emerges, now without any seal. It's the place where I experience the most pleasant sensation in this entire plane. Right here I dress in white clothes, and then sit on my meditation cloak, and invite others to join me. Then I listen, and quickly understand what I understand without words, and I tell you, we are going to climb the Pyramid of the Sun, and everyone takes what is right to them. After the meditation I stand up and tell them, women go up the steps opposite, on the right, and men on the left. They get up, and enjoy the atmosphere a little like children on Sunday, because the day is pleasant and the sun is warm. Meanwhile, driven by my inner impulse, I head to the central part, in front of the pyramid right where the door is, at the base, and I see a small pit. Maybe this is the place that leads to the first seal, I think to myself. I stand in front of the pit that guards this door, and I feel that the seal on the pyramid's spine is now open, because I can perceive the energy coming from within the pyramid, flowing through here. Without anyone near me, I pronounce the mantra, Om. Then I head towards the staircase on the left, and ascend this part. I meet my wife at the planned place, now in front of the central staircase of the majestic pyramid, and we begin the ascent. On the first level, we locate the side ceremonial dais, and this absorbs my attention almost entirely, as I try to find the next seal to verify it's open. An inner impulse makes me jump to that spot and quickly scan it to locate the exact location where the energy of the third seal flows. Indeed, I clearly saw the place, and there was no longer any seal, but rather a torrent of energy flowing through it so unstoppable that it almost overwhelmed me. I was able to remain there for only a few seconds, as the urgency of the situation didn't allow me to do anything else. Americo Living Trail, 383, and no one ever passed through this place. In fact, there's no path leading to it. This is how the guardians of the sacred tradition, aware that this torrent of energy, when captured here directly by people in general, is more easily stimulated by evil than good, have opted to keep access forbidden. It's a space that's only supposed to be occupied when performing a ceremony in the presence of beings with recognized spiritual hierarchy. So as soon as I entered this forbidden plane, without a second thought, I walked from one end to the other, closing a circle with the sword I held in my hand. Then I headed toward the center to feel this energy, which overwhelmed me. A police officer, guarding the place, began shouting from below, terrified by the presence of a desecrator. It was evident that he had standing orders, that no one was to enter this platform. The feeling that their screams produced in me was not the same as when the maestro bricklayer first, and then the official at the Pyramid of the Moon, called our attention. Perhaps things were worse here, because the officer didn't seem to hesitate, and was actually quite angry. In fact, he was repelling the yang energy with all his might, in the name of the law. He shouted furiously from afar for me to leave the ceremonial temple immediately, as if I belonged to it, or was taking his role very seriously. At that moment, I look ahead at the pyramid, and on the first level, just above it, is my group, expectant and nervous. Among them is my wife. She, in particular, and the others, are worried about the brother policeman's lack of understanding of what this plane is, and our need to make contact with it. How I wish my bandmates could be with me, feeling this energy. But there's a reason. Only Irina, cautious, had closely followed my movements, and remained on the edge of the sacred plane, directly taking in the effluvia of this place, on such a unique date. In just over a minute, more police officers are seen approaching the scene. It was then, that I completely left the sacred plane. I rejoined the group, took my companion's hand and we continued the ascent toward the summit. One of the officers is speaking pleasantly to Irina, as she isn't allowed to carry incense. However, I'm surprised that this officer isn't furious anymore, but actually seems happy. The sister seems used to these situations, remains calm and says it's about to go out. And he continues on, discreetly ignoring the officer's orders. As we reach the level before the summit, she approaches me to ask, Americo Living Trail, 384. Where are we going? Go to the center of the summit to reserve a spot, was my reply. I take my companion to the level before the summit, and the two of us head towards the nape of the imposing Pyramid of the Sun, where I locate what I believe is the equivalent of the Antakarana Bridge. He located the place and we meditated with our necks together, back to back, to unify, seal and open ourselves to the higher mental. An authority figure is nearby, ensuring that some young people do not descend from the top of the pyramid on this steep slope. After our short meditation, I want to see if he minds our presence, and then joke with him about taking a picture with our camera. He smiles in a friendly way, telling me that it's fine with us. We continue our journey, closing the circle on this level, around the last level, and then, on the opposite side, we climb to the top. Gabriela comes to greet us, and says there are a lot of people, especially children. The incense burner is in the center of the summit. I take off my sneakers and socks and position myself in lotus position on the top of the pyramid, which seems to be waiting for us.